forgot. Not a morning person, but people responsible for building the Drupal site, the entire team that that's composed of, does take a few forms. That can be a large organization's internal team responsible for building their tooling. CNN, or all of Time Warner really, has an internal team to run some of their internal communication tools. The Web Channel has their own internal Drupal team. Some of the large publications do. It could be that. It could be something that I think is more common that I run into at Drupalcamps is the digital consulting firm. Whether you're brought in for consulting advice or your target clients are trying to offsite or outsource all of their Drupal work with you, your firm, or your group. Kind of the third group when we think about development is a product team, where the software that you're building is directly interfacing with your target customer and your client base. So that's us in this part of the conversation, as opposed to them, the client, and kind of starting to personify the client and what goes on in their head. And our clients typically are the group responsible that directly faces with the customers that interact with the software or the product. The users that actually interact with it, that actually use it, they have an idea of what that is, their target users, their target roles. No one will understand the business needs better than the business, the client themselves. Time typically thinks that the technology is this magic unicorn. It's just a graphic on the web. Why can't you just move it over there? Technology will magically solve all of their problems, or maybe they have talked, they're able to talk the sales team into technology being able to solve more problems than feasibly we should have agreed to. The client's objective is getting to the outcome, accomplishing their goals. They're not really interested in hearing all the time about why the IT teams are having all these difficulties and have all these technical words, and they want to stand up or have blockers or some dependency chain broke. They're more interested in getting to the outcome and concerned about their business. There's a third group that's involved in this collaboration of building successful software, and that's management. These are the people who are responsible for delivering the software, the ones that fret about delivery time. Are we on target? Are we on time? Are we on scope? They kind of have this risk that's inherent with them that things are going wrong. If things didn't go wrong, we wouldn't have to do things like add a buffer to our project estimates, or worry about running over budget or scope creep or anything like that. And I think the mitigation technique to that is, we'll plan all of the things. We can just plan for chaos to go away. We'll have more meetings. We'll try Scrum. We'll try less meetings. We'll try different workflows. Try different documentation. These are valid risks, and these are some of the challenges in doing software development. These three groups, the client, us, and management, often have friction between us when trying to deliver software. It leads to poor expectations on kind of everyone's side. The project's going to come in over budget. It's not going to be on time. It's not going to cover exactly what we need it to. It's not going to work in production. It may not work all the time. It may not have the right availability that we're looking for. We start building these expectations. This developer group is no different than the last time we had to work with these guys. They're no different than the ones before that. They're no different than the firm we had to fire before that. They're no different than the firm that we have here. They don't understand, the business side is maybe they don't understand what business is. They, get bogged down in technical terms, and I don't know. They don't work with us. They don't work well with us. It leads to this initial friction in a relationship of maybe misunderstanding, a lot of ambiguity and mistrust. Maybe what they're delivering is going to be hard to maintain and update. It's just not going to fill the needs that we have. So we, kind of a standard approach to software development, how we try to solve this or survive in this landscape is we've processed something like this, right? Planning, strategy, we'll build requirements, we'll go through, we'll design, we'll start developing, we'll test, we'll deploy. Waterfall, agile, but some iteration of this, right? That's what we tell ourselves. I think what more likely ends up happening is we'll go through planning, we'll go through discovery with the client, we'll go through strategy, start building requirements. We missed some stuff. We need to go back to planning. Okay, that's fine. We got the requirements now. We're ready to go to design. Design starts designing. Nope. We have requirements that still don't make sense. Have to go back to planning. Go to strategy. Design says, almost there. Not quite, guys. Give us a little bit better requirements that make sense. Cool, we got it. Design and strategy go back and forth. Requirements match up with design. Design feel good about it. They hand off. We're ready to start coding. Hand off to developers? Nope, not at all. Design goes back. Okay, we're sorry. We know better. All right, a little bit better. That makes sense, but that's going to be really difficult to implement those designs. Go back. Development goes, hey, we have all these buttons in the designs. What do they do? I don't know. It's what requirement asks for. I don't know. It's what the client asked for. We never talked about it. All the way back. And we have this like iteration, go back. Finally, we get where we feel good about it. We go into testing, and oh, well, we never discussed that this entire product has to live behind the client's single sign-on service on their server. Oops. Go all the way back. And it's like, we never have a lot of times we don't have a full grasp of what exactly the needs are, what the requirements are. And we have this like long phase where we end up going back all the way back down a lot of times. Finally, we get to limping out what we feel is kind of best. We feel like we've had to make a lot of compromises. There's maybe some skeletons buried in the closet, but we get out, we get deployed, and we kind of move on. And a lot of time, like consultant agencies of like, this is the win or the success of we've delivered this product, we finished in some meaningful sense of on time or in budget, and then we move on. That is a hard to find success. Like that can be a small physical success, but just because you've launched a product by no means defines success for you and the endeavor you and the client set up to do. Does what you build, other than technically work, does it accomplish the goals? Is it effective? Is it, how effective is it? How successful was it for the client? Did you build a successful application? So, looking at that cycle, I don't know if people have seen this before, but the further you get down in a project's life cycle, the more time you spend with it, the more increased cost that changes have. If we're already in development and we have most of our major systems built, most of our epics are met, and we come back with a major feature, if we have to, if that affects all the systems we've already built, already tested, our design never accounted for it because our requirements never accounted for it, like that gets much more expensive than having these conversations and discovering more up front, thinking through. We never thought of this case. We're building an e-commerce site, but instead of getting all the way here, and because no one ever talked about taxes, how we're going to collect taxes on our checkout, we can go back at the beginning, have that, and it's a lot easier to talk about and have those changes early on. It's an interesting landscape, software development. I think I kind of boil it down to there's three major challenges to overcome when starting on this endeavor, no matter what type of team you're on. And that's that the client can't always really define what their actual desired outcomes are. Requirements are important, and a lot of times, again, it's this miscommunication between us and the client, right? I know what my business is. I know what the desires are. Especially if you're a consulting firm, I trust your expertise, but I don't necessarily trust that you fully understand and grasp and have my business interests at heart. So I'm going to maybe over-explain or not give context. For example, I want a slider on the home page that auto-scrolls because I think that'll work. Well, I can do that, sure, but can we talk about why you need that? What are we trying to include? Engagement rate, call to action? How is something like that actually going to affect your desired outcome? Are you looking for better user engagement, to build your audience, things like that? Secondly, developers often don't understand what the client needs built, and that's a big difference between kind of going through an itemized list of what the client might ask for and understanding why they're trying to build what they're doing, or like why the features are in front of you. Understanding this, the client's not building this because they've called us in as the expert, regardless if we're an internal product team or consultant agency, or that's our product. This is our expertise. We need to understand the client's needs so we can use our expertise effectively and building kind of the best suited solutions to get those desired outcomes. And thirdly, oftentimes clients don't always understand the technical implications of the requirements they ask for. I think it's fantastic that you talk to someone with Photoshop, or let's see, I think it's fantastic you talk someone with Adobe After Effects and Premiere into designing a mock-up of OS X and wrapping it in a web browser tile for your video and handed me that as a spec. That's not really technical feasible, regardless of what that designer convinced you of. So really, one of the things that we're trying to look at is trying to mitigate this. And this is interesting, some interesting data. And these from the Standish Group, they put out, they do a lot of analysis on a large amount of projects. This was from 2000 on a cross-section of about 1,200 products. They were looking at the success post-launch, the success of how well these projects did. And they found that number was relatively low, sub 50%. So then they started looking at individual pieces of the projects about what individual features or implementations of that project were successful. And we have, the numbers are arbitrary. I'm not concerned that we need to get just 43 up, but that's a large number. We have 45% of features in this study that just weren't ever used. I've seen similar studies that kind of corroborate this. That's a concern, but that makes sense. I'm okay with thinking, not all of our features are going to be used all the time. Some of our use cases, they need to be there to support those behaviors, and they're important behaviors and interactions to support. We need to support those kinds of users. If we went to the accessibility talks yesterday, we may not have a large number of a percentage of our user base that is going to interact with our site with a screen reader. That can fall on the rarely. We need to account for those behaviors. So I'm okay with that breakdown. This seems like the result of mistrust and miscommunication in those relationships between us, the client, and the businesses. Either I can't communicate my business goals effectively. I don't know that we won't ask for the business goals effectively, and the solution is let's just throw all of the things at the dartboard, and that's how we'll solve that. If we build all of the things, some of those will hit, and those will be effectively what we need. This is a concern. So we're along with trying to increase communication, trust, and build more effective software, we're looking at decreasing that. That's a huge waste. So that's where BDD comes in. BDD is behavior-driven development. It is not, Behat is not exclusively BDD. I know that's for the last few years been the hotness in the Drupal community, but behavior-driven development is an entire paradigm. It's about building software by describing behaviors from the perspective of the stakeholders, not just getting locked down in the technology or in the requirement, always keeping in mind that your software has humans interacting with it. Technology will not solve goals on its own at all. It's technology that supports human interaction, human behavior. That's what we need to focus on and make sure that we're supporting all of those individual needs and behaviors as the stakeholders and the client best understand them. It describes a cycle of interactions with well-defined outputs, and that's important as well, resulting in the delivery of working, tested software that actually matters to the client and their business needs, whether it's a product or we're an internal team. Well, that's important. We know exactly what the outcomes are. They're defined. They're quantifiable. We can build features. We know the requirements are a little bit better stated. We can say this is done, and we built this, we did this, and it's in support of that business goal. That's a much more successful conversation to have than maybe delivering like the more of the waterfall approach of delivering large chunks of a project, and it's maybe the client's understanding of their own goals have shifted, or we just we missed the mark with what our initial conversation was months ago. Some other perks of BDD, and these are kind of the, in my opinion, the biggest win. I mean, it's interesting because we have BDD in testing and quality assurance and less for fewer regression bugs, but this is the biggest, really. It's clear communication, not between a project manager or the management team and the client, between everybody. Clear communication, and it creates a shared language. Those are the two biggest points. It's hard to communicate in Drupal, especially as we're moving forward. Drupal, and Drupal 8 specifically, we have a concept of blocks in Drupal, always have. Twigs have a concept of blocks. I can't just say blocks and know that you know what I mean. Plugins are another kind of semi-ambiguous term. If I'm a developer talking to a client and I start using words like views and blocks and panels, and that's difficult to comprehend even if you're within the community. And then we start introducing other libraries where we have decoupled and we're pulling in React and Angular and other Symfony components. It's difficult for different disciplines within Drupal to communicate to each other. And at times we expect our clients to understand that at all, or give them a brief 2-minute, 5-minute explanation of the difference between panels and display suite and expect them to grasp that. No, we want a clear communication using simple shared language. An added benefit that we've actually encountered with this recently is if you ever work with non-native English speakers, this is huge. BDD has a very well-structured language that will remove some of your more ambiguous dual meaning words that we use in English when communicating. That has been a big win. Another one is, we're capturing the intent of the requirements. We're not just saying, well, we built this feature and it works to spec. No, we built this feature, this is the goal that it tries to solve, and stepping through why we were trying to solve and walking through how real humans are going to interact with it, we know exactly what the intent was, and it meets that intent. We can describe it like that in behaviors. That's huge as well. That's a lot easier. That's a much more meaningful way when you have intent captured and that shared communication of telling the client, hey, this feature is done. Not, we had a tech spec that was written up, PM talked to the client, PM gave the notes to the tech lead wrote up some tech notes on it, and one of our developers came by and just checked off every line on the tech notes. This is a much more meaningful way to describe to the client, like, hey, we built this. It does this goal. This is how it interacts. You interact with it on your site. It's done. We know that it's done. So it's really, really all about behaviors. Technology is the enabler, right? We can solve all of our problems with technology. Wait, no, that's not really true. Technology is great at letting us dig our own holes if we don't have, an intent or guidance. Technology, the mentality of technology is awesome. We can build all of the things. We'll just build it, and they'll come. That doesn't really accomplish much. Again, we're not. Again, getting back to, I just really had a good time at the accessibility talks yesterday. We can build a site that technically works, but if we've never talked about behaviors and human interaction, maybe none of us ever thought about accessibility and how user behaviors are going to work on accessibility, how our site works with a screen reader. Those are easier points to approach and talk about when we're talking about behaviors rather than technology to meet requirements. So technology should really support human behaviors. At the end of the day, that's what successful business relationships and successful outcomes are built around. That's kind of an overview of the landscape. Going to back way up to more of the early discovery phase of, okay, we said we want to hear what the client's business goals are, and we want to make sure that those are good. Those don't often come out or aren't communicated effectively right away. And there's a difference between a good goal and a bad stated goal. And you can have multiples, and these are important. Once we understand the goals, we can talk about the features we want to implement to support those goals. We can prioritize. We can knock features out that don't support that endeavor. We can make sure that everything we're building is directly supporting that. So, what's a goal look like? Okay, well, I have a site. I want to make more money. Okay, that's fine. That's fair. You have a site. I could technically help you make more money without any more context or definition. Boom. I'm going to slap all of the ads on your site. You now make more money per page load. You have no call to action, no user experience, and technically I won. I fulfilled your requirements. That's not really useful for us in the context of software development and building requirements based on feature requests. To rephrase that and to work with the client, it's a collaboration effort. To work with the business end, I want to increase my revenues by 12% over the next 12 months through our e-commerce site. Great. I know that's quantifiable, that's reasonable, I think that's tentatively doable, it's measurable, that's a great goal. We can, just looking at user experience or what it is, we're looking at increasing revenues through an e-commerce experience. So we can focus on areas that will impact that positively. And we can start with things like data and where choke points are, and things like, well, let's see if we can increase user experience, if we can update our call to action, let's decrease page load times. I know that I know that you're wanting, you want to update the footer with some new logo information, or maybe you want some crazy new JavaScript slider on the home page. But I think that if we could change, we have this other feature where if we could reduce the step of the checkout from 5 to 3, that's way more beneficial and makes more of an impact on what your business goals are. And the clients they appreciate that over time. Making sure that our effort is going to what their stated goals are, what the outcomes are that they need. So business goals really, these need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be quantifiable, and they have to be bound by time in some aspect. You can't just kind of reach for the moon and have wide-stretching, arbitrary goals. But these goals really are just, we need the context to understand and move forward. So, stepping through this, I'm going to keep that goal. We're trying to increase revenues on an e-commerce site. We're going to go through, we're going to start talking about requirements. We're going to plan our requirements once we talk about them with behaviors. So let's imagine we have an e-commerce store. Because we're in Florida, let's say it's, we're selling oranges from an orchard. Selling oranges and trying to ship them all across the state. This is a feature that comes up. We need to add sales tax and a delivery cost on checkout. I don't actually know what it is in Florida, but I know in Georgia we're working on passing a law where we can start, where if you're an online retailer and you make over $250,000 a year, you're going to be responsible for sales tax moving forward. I think currently it's voluntary, which I'm not sure how voluntary taxing works, but let's pretend that that's also affecting us in Florida. If we want to increase revenues, we don't want to be stuck next year when we do an audit being responsible for all of our customer sales tax for the year. Also, we want to start shipping. We need a delivery cost. We don't want to ship for free. Okay, that makes sense. That fits into that goal. Can you give us some more details around that? Sure. Sales tax is 20% because I like simple math. And that sounds reasonable to me this morning. Delivery cost for small orders, that is orders less than $20, is going to be $3. Delivery cost for medium orders, that is orders more than $20, is $2. So it's that incentive of, if you have a slightly larger order, shipping is going to be a little bit less. That looks great on the surface. I could 100% go out right now and implement that on your site, and it will match everything you've described here. That's fine. I'm not going to do that, though. I'm going to start thinking through about how we're going to interact with that. That's fine. So I'm going to, in my mind, start crafting out some experiences of this before I spend time implementing anything or even go through that whole cycle of design, development, testing, pushing up. I'm going to go, okay, well, I'm adding sales tax and delivery costs. So let me think about that. I put $10 in my checkout basket. I go to checkout. I hit checkout. I add 20% sales tax. That's $2 more. I'm at $12. Then I add shipping. Okay. This isn't really clear whether I am responsible for taxing shipping. Is shipping taxable? Do I add shipping into the main cost, order cost, and then tax? I don't know. It really wasn't obvious until we started walking through how we interact with that. It's kind of ambiguous, and that creates miscommunication. We don't want to move forward with that. We want to catch that early, kick that back to the client, get a definitive on that before. Hopefully, we don't miscalculate, run that wrong, push that out, and that doesn't get caught until the client has the financial auditor come in and look at this and find that we undertaxed them through the year because we calculated this incorrectly. So that's fine. We go to the client, we ask them about it. Because this is how the math's going to work this morning, they say no, shipping fees aren't taxable. That's fine. We can work with that. So we have that information. We continue to build some examples, talk about the behaviors. Well, all right, I'm going to put an order in my basket for $30. Okay, I walk through, 20% sales tax. That puts me up at $36 plus 2. Okay, $38. That's fine. And as I'm doing that, I think I feel good. I know what happens when I have an order of 10. With 30, those meet both of the criteria. And then I go, well, there's kind of a blank space right here that's not covered. What happens on orders that are $20? Didn't come up. If I built this to spec, I might have introduced a fun little loophole that any order for $20 exactly, you pay no taxes and there's no shipping fee. Again, this requirement made sense until we started going through and breaking it down into how users are going to interact with it. Just some of the issues that jump out on that, so that weren't well defined. What comes first, sales tax or delivery fee? What happens on orders that are exactly $20? We don't want this. This is something we can catch through talking about how users are going to interact and what the behaviors are of the feature that we're trying to add. And we can cover this much earlier in the cycle before we go through and develop this and push it back in front of the client and have to do like another iterative cycle to go back and get that calculation right or make sure that we account for some edge cases. Especially if it goes along as far as we've already tested, deployed it, and there's other systems that are now relying on this system, and some other specific calculations further down that rely on this, that now we have to go back and once it's caught months later, we have to go back and revise everything. So we really don't like ambiguity. We like clear, well-defined requirements that specify intent that don't have this ambiguity. So I don't know if you can see that well, but we're going to plan with examples, and we're just BDD is all about plain English, good, clear communication. So when I describe these examples, I'm going to write them down. I'm going to say, given a product is priced at $15 when I added my order, then the total order price should be $21. That's fine. I'm just saying, I'm only describing the interaction that the users are going to experience. I'm not putting hard detail in my example about how the calculation works. All I know is I'm a user. I want to put that in my basket. I want to go through, and when this action happens, I want the right calculated amount to be calculated. Given I'm a product, or given that product is $25 when I add it to the order, then the price should be $32. That's good. I also have one for when the price is exactly $20. The client has decided, we talked to them, we brought that up. They didn't think about that either. They've decided $20 orders are, we're going to classify those as medium orders. $2 shipping on those. So that's cool. This is awesome. We described exactly how what we're intending to build will work. It's easy to understand. Anybody in the Drupal side, site builders, designers, themers, developers, PMs, everyone can look at this and understand what's going on. There's no kind of domain-specific language in here from our side. As well, the business and client team can also look at this and they can understand exactly what's going on here and get an idea of what it is we're trying to build, how it's going to work, and if there was other misunderstanding or miscommunication that happened in the requirements gathering or discussing this, we can show this to them or expose this to them, and they can. It's a lot easier to visualize this than saying like, oh, well, we're gonna drop in a Drupal commerce, we're gonna use the discount module. This is digestible and easier to understand. And then it reads literally as just plain text sentences. So there are kind of some magic words there. In Drupal, we will rely on tools like Behat and Gherkin to help us in this testing. But the magic words there are, it's this like structure of given, when, then. Given some context happens, when some action that one of the users or actors interacting with our site is going to perform, then I expect some desired outcome. So look back at this. Okay, so given the context, given that I have a product priced at $15, when I add it to my order, so that's the action, I'm putting it in my shopping cart, then the outcome I'm expecting is that the order price is going to be calculated correctly, accounting for tax and shipping fees. It's kind of a reusable, agreeable language. It reads as plain English, so that's fantastic. Going to go through another example of kind of more of a Drupal-y example. Let's pretend I have a site and I want to create and edit content just to help inform the world how objectively much better dogs are than cats. That is my outcome. So, if I were to think of an example of behavior that would describe that, I could say something like, given I'm an admin of the site, so I'm giving some context, right? I'm a user. I am a person or a user or a human being that should be able to do this. When I log in, I should be able to create content. I didn't add any Drupalisms in here. I didn't add any specific. There's no web-specific technology. Like, given I go to user/login, or when I interact with login toboggan, or whatever it may be, these are just only describe how we're going to interact with the software at a behavioral level. We'll get to that in a second. So this is, I think this is a huge win. Just on this alone, you'll get a lot more meaningful, useful feedback from the clients and from the team responsible for gathering your business requirements when you have this approach of describing the behaviors of how what you're planning to implement will work. And that's kind of a nice workflow, right? We understand what the goals and the context are. We get the requirements. We're going to describe it in behaviors, and we kind of have this language with the client. If I'm gonna maybe put a pause in there. If you were looking to try to adopt Behat or testing for a testing first delivery, TDD, testing driven development, where you're having testing, or you want BDD or whatever, I think this is a great place to start to segue into it. Not because there is a cost and there's some other cool benefits that come with BDD that are implicit. We have this very defined structured language. We can do testing automation and all kinds of cool things using a bunch of other technologies and complication. This right here, this is step one. Just start having these conversations. Start thinking, start this paradigm of thinking like this. I think this is how, if you were to try to start rolling this out on a team and getting everyone on board, this is step one. Start here. Start having these conversations. Start, putting this language in front of your management teams, in front of your entire Drupal team. So that being said, if you get to that point, or you have a higher buy-in, or you're ready to kind of take advantage of some of the other aspects, because this is a structured language, we do have tools like Behat, which I'm not going to cover in great detail here. I think there's much other talks, but we have some tools for easily kind of discerning or helping us along in our effort for using BDD in our development cycle. Behat and PHP Spec are both kind of the go-to PHP libraries. So I'm going to look at one of the advantages of if we have a bunch of acceptance criteria written like this. So I've got my plain vanilla site, plain vanilla Drupal site that I have some. I have some features that I've written about this, and we've got some acceptance criteria, and we've written them in that same kind of format, following our given wins in, right? Okay, if I'm on the home page, I should see effectively the home text. Okay, that makes sense. This is more or less, I mean, other than it's structured and there's some keyword highlighting, this kind of looks like I could have ripped it straight from one of our tickets out of Redmine or whatever your ticketing system in. It's kind of human readable, I can understand and jump in. Once we get to that point, we have the ability to, using tools like Behat, we can come through, if I can type, features, I think we can see that. These tests easily become executable with Behat, which is an immensely powerful tool. Not only have we decided that this is how this implementation is going to work, our clients agreed with it, we have a shared understanding of what done is and what we're trying to accomplish. Now we can test, and we can, before we push this out and we decide that it's done, we can verify that. We've run this test. That is absolutely true. We can push it up, and we've agreed everything works. Once we have this in place, moving forward, if we introduce, if something else further down the road was introduced that breaks this feature that we agreed that works, that accomplishes your business goal, we can easily flag it, and we can catch it before it becomes a huge concern. Before maybe it breaks some business logic somewhere else, and it doesn't come up until regression testing months down the road, we can catch these. That's fantastic. We, through our development cycle, look at another slightly different one. Not the best acceptance criteria, but like just say I need Workbench. We're having some trouble getting the Workbench module to work. As a developer, I go, okay, this will do it. This will nail it. This is exactly what we need to fulfill our business requirement. I think I got it. It works here. It works for me. It works on my machine. It works on dev. So we say it works. We're ready to push it up. We can, using Behat, run and test something like that. Say, sure, it works. Nope, wait, it doesn't work. We can catch this. It's just, it worked on local, fine. It worked on our dev machine that is a shared dev instance, and we're not sure who was the last one to went in and edit something in the database. Well, sure, you enable Workbench in the database on dev, but there's nothing, like we're not cloning a database up to production. We need, put an update hook so we can fire this consistently on our production environment. Okay, fine. That's a fair argument. We can come through and, nope, not EB. Nope. We can come through and put that in, and we fix it. We fix it on our end before it was brought up as a bug from the client, before it was something that would cause some regression issue, or maybe somebody introduced a module that uninstalled something we were depending on. There. Boom. Run our test again. It's green. That's what we like to see. And I like how this gives us a constant report and feedback that's useful to everyone involved. This is a lot more useful to the project management team, or your management team on your side, the client team, everyone involved. Seeing this plain text breakage of given the Workbench module was installed, we couldn't find a module that was installed with that name. We could take the time to share that with the client. It should be exposed, but we don't take a great deal of effort of explaining what's going on with the bottlenecks are. You can see what features are broken. You can see what features are successful. You can see exactly where we are. We have this transparency of our progress in helping you accomplish your business goals. And it's kind of like the client's perspective of all they're seeing on a regular basis is more and more of their business goals are lighting up green as we're running these reports, which is fantastic. One of the done right, and I think one of the things I enjoy most about Behat done well is, these features are self-documenting. They describe intent of the features. It's easier to step in from a developer's perspective and go, this feature is strange and not working as expected. I didn't write it. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, here's the intent. Here's the behaviors of how it was supposed to work. So it helps give me that context to jump in and work on something like this. But it's also so fast. I just want to run. Let's do this. I think that'll work. So if I just run a small feature suite, I just ran tests on 3 different features or scenarios, and for what, 17 seconds or 17 milliseconds? That's fantastic. 17 seconds. I'll take that. That can scale up with my project lifecycle. Whether I've inherited a support cycle where I'm starting to define these moving forward, whether I'm on a completely new build and we're defining these from the ground up. Like that execution speed, especially when you compare it to what we were using in Drupal 7 with like simple tests, those execution times will scale up very well. So hopping back to some slides, not you. So just kind of overall in review of the whole point, to go back of why Behat is such a popular tool. Behat is a tool meant to extend support BDD, and like why that is our target, why that's even relevant, or why we're trying to hit that on a consistent basis. That's because you get this result, this outcome of we're going to implement stories from the user. Our stories are going to be made up of features. Features are going to enable capabilities like user interactions, user behaviors that deliver the outcome the client is looking for, rather than just building stuff for the sake of building it. And then the big key is we stop, because that's exactly what done is. We know what it is. It gave them their business goal. We're not going to implement something that was outside of that overreaches that. We're going to hit basically the MVP of what your business goal is and push that up. And once we're done, because we've stopped, because we've met that, we can confirm and verify we've met that, put that in front of the client. Get that to them as soon as possible. We don't need to sit on that. We've built, you have an e-commerce site? Great. We 100% we feel we have accurately built your taxing and shipping delivery costs. Push that in front of the client, let them look at that, and let them get that in their hands and get active feedback right away. Some of the effects that has on cost is it kind of creates, it changes the mindset of the clients of, to accomplish my business goals with you, the development team, I need to ring it for all of the features I possibly can. Well, and I understand, I can 100% empathize with how you reach that approach, but by us focusing so heavily on what your business goals are and doing everything we can to make sure all of our actions are supporting that, you move from just trying to ring us for all of the features and maybe have a lot of feature overwaste, into kind of a pay-per capability, pay-per capabilities that are achieving your outcome model, which is much more lucrative. You're much more effective in spending your resources, whether that's time, development resources, or money. And another benefit is we're stopping because we know exactly what done is. We've agreed. We can verify. We're going to ship that to you as soon as possible. We're going to get a better feedback loop. If requirements aren't perfect, if your business requirements need to shift based on feedback loops, we can get done sooner. We know that we're done sooner. Put that in front of you, and we can have those conversations and feedback loops sooner and more often. So what about the risk? Well, back to the management's perspective of we're always concerned about delivery times and going over budget, scope creep, and budget creep, and blowing the budget up, and unknowns, undiscoverables, risk. Well, with this approach, we're having regular deliveries where everything that we delivered to that point is done. Also, everything that we're delivering at that during that delivery is done, as well as everything else that was previously delivered is still done, because we've got language and we've got some tests that verify and confirm that. If there was a regression bug that broke another system that was completed months ago, we know, we get the feedback. We can solve that preemptively before it ever has to reach client testing, or rely on like raw user acceptance testing and let one of our testers go back and manually test a system that worked months ago and has worked for months. Maybe over time they stop looking at it so intimately. We also have measured results, which is great, because we can start talking to the client about how much success and how much value they're getting back for the time that they've invested working with us. And we know, like, this is huge. We know what done is. We don't have to draw on with features forever. We also don't have to stop. We don't have to start work on features that aren't completable. The requirements of it are going to put us on a hole that we don't see a way to get out. We can have those conversations. We can untangle those knots first, and we don't start work until we have this defined done. Once we have this defined done, I can build to it and not have to worry I'm going to come back and have to fix it later. So that's the end for me. In conclusion, I'm a big fan, and I think we're seeing it more and more, that testing's pretty important. We got some great tools available in Drupal 8. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Behat, and I'm a fan of it mostly because I like the result and the outcome that the clients receive. I don't like building things for the sake of building things. I like solving problems for our clients. That means, at the end of the day, we have to make sure they're getting the desired outcomes to match their business goals. I think this is the best way to do this. It all starts with interpersonal communication and working between those teams. Sometimes you need to have the context. Sometimes it means saying no to the client. But I really think this is the best way to get the outcomes. A couple of resources, if you're curious, and if you look at my Twitter account, I tweet the slides. So I didn't cover it in any detail, but I think it's well documented and easy to jump into. If you want to start writing Behat tests or looking at Behat, there's some Behat documentation. Additionally, if you just want to start playing around and skip all the install instructions and setup and configuration, there's a Vagrant box, a virtual box on GitHub. You can just clone down, need VirtualBox and Vagrant, and then you're done. And you can instantly jump into a Drupal site and start running Behat test with it. But that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions? Comments, thoughts, concerns? Yes?
What kind of pushback do you get from clients? I mean, when I've suggested we do requirements as in Gherkin, they look at me like I have two heads.
A lot. No, it's fair. And a lot of initial buy-in is difficult. I think it's because when we approach those conversations, there's that initial mistrust of, we just need you to deliver as many features as possible, and stop talking about adding additional processes that we don't think we need. I think it's been some give and take. I think the most successful projects we've launched, we delivered where the client was happy when we delivered the full product, as well as the product went on to be successful after we delivered, were where we really stood our ground and pushed back on that initially. I think my favorite example, we worked with huge national publishing company it was a 6-month endeavor. They were in a bad situation. They just fired the previous firm, and they had a firing on the internal client team, and weren't really interested in us coming in and saying, I know you're in a hurry and this is a time crunch, but we need to focus on this. We stood our ground. We put our case, showed the benefits of it, but kind of stood our ground a bit, and it led to tentative engagement with the client. But as soon, I think 2 weeks after we started delivering on a regular basis, and could meet our goals, and our goals, like what we were building, was meeting their business requirements, they were amazed and loved it. They loved it. They started getting the buy-in. By the end, it was the client that pushed back and wanted to fight us on every inch of it. 3/4 of the way through the project, we got a small contract extension to come in and help train their internal teams for it. I think it's, I'd say standing the ground as much as possible. I mean, you don't want to ruin a relationship, but really focusing on the business value that they're going to get in return for what your time is and what they're investing is it is worth it.
I had a good friend who was the customer and she basically said, the biggest negative I see to this is that means I actually have to know what I want.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely accurate.
That's terrible.
So they don't like that.
Yep. I mean, it's if you're whatever you're tacking into Drupal, if your goal is short-term financial gain, then yes, you can skip this. But if your goal is to build successful products and experiences for the people you're working for, this isn't a conversation you could skip. And it's, back to like the cost of change. We need to force those uncomfortable conversations when it's cheap to talk about and change, rather than we need to rebuild the whole system because we didn't have this conversation months ago. It isn't always an easy sell, but I think my approach has always been, weirdly enough, I don't know, it's strange that it is it seems strange that it is. Like, I understand on the surface we're saying, let's do some more work than what we had planned. We're going to do testing, and we're going to use this weird language. But there's a lot of research to support, quantifiable research. This approach will lead to fewer regression bugs, less wasted features. You're going to get more features delivered that are on target using something like this than you would by just jumping straight into features and doing testing as an afterthought. I think I focus heavily on that and more building a successful experience with the client and making them successful than just getting their product out the door as fast as possible, or their initial idea of what their product is. Yeah. Anyone else?
If you had the hazard to guess, what would be the average hourly cost for building this sort of thing into a project?
I don't typically. That's a good question. I don't typically let it eat up more than about like 10 or every aspect, like writing the test, the arriving at the shared language. I don't like to let it try to eat up anywhere close to like 10 or 15% of the budget. And I use that as a mark because understanding this language, like just writing the words given when then is not. Those aren't good acceptance criteria. I hit that mark, and I use that as whatever the team that's working on that project's comfortability is with the whole process, the tool chain, and everything. I think you can get really accurate and get a lot of success with it, but a poorly written test around a okay acceptance criteria is much better. You still have the benefit result, and much better than skipping that process altogether.
Quick question. Who typically writes your test, and what step in your development process do they do that?
Developers write their test. That way I know the developers acknowledge that they understand what the contexts are, what the business goals are. We've had different approaches of putting those back in front of the client to make sure, just to confirm, almost of repeating the requirement back. This is what we understand. Please say no now before we build this. But then once you have your acceptance criteria, then in Behat, or to take a weird tangent, you don't always have to test behaviors using the UI. At times, especially in Drupal, you can test it using just the system itself. So we use Behat and PHP spec for that. But you have your acceptance criteria, write a test as close to approximation as you can get, and then go and build. Back to the case of how much we allow for it, if we have a team that has never written Behat tests before, we won't emphasize so much of that, but we still make them write the acceptance criteria. And we've augmented lack of expertise and experience before by, we still want the acceptance test. But instead of maybe automating that and making sure that we have all of our tests runnable, we can pull in one of our UAT guys to come through and after the fact and do manual user and testing. The Gherkin language Gherkin tests, we have just handed those off to our UAT guys before. Cool. Anybody else?
Thanks, man.
Cool. Thanks, guys.